The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with Purdue University.
Hi, I'm Angela Buckman, and welcome to a very special edition of Boiler Bytes. In honor of Purdue's rich 150-year legacy of giant leaps, we're celebrating distinguished Boilermakers who not only shaped the identity of the university itself, but left a lasting imprint on the world beyond. We begin our show with a Purdue alumnus who needs no introduction.
The time that I spent at Purdue learning engineering was absolutely critical to everything I've done throughout my entire career.
Growing up in Wapakoneta, Ohio, young Neil Armstrong had a keen interest in airplanes. His dream of becoming a fighter pilot steered him toward Purdue University.
Neil was on a program with the Navy. The only way he could afford to come to Purdue was on scholarship. The Navy paid his way. When he first came here, he got right involved with the Purdue All-American Marching Band. He played the baritone horn.
I remember aerodynamics class taught by Professor Shanks. And the first day of class, he gave us an assignment, which happened to be Bernoulli's law, and the assignment was to criticize. And it was right then that I realized that they weren't teaching us facts and information. It was teaching me how to think.
He wasn't the number one student on campus, but he had good solid grades, a B student. In January of '49, they took him into active duty. He then went over to Korea and served in Korea. When he came back, he was involved in a fraternity, Phi Delta Theta, and in musicals done through his fraternity. Neil Armstrong, when he graduated here in 1955, did not have a goal of becoming the first person to walk on the moon. At that time, the word astronaut wasn't even commonly used in the English language. He wanted to become a test fighter pilot. He wanted to be, and he did.
There was no space program. There was not even a vision of the space program at that time.
But 14 years after he graduated from Purdue, he did walk on the moon. So the lessons for students today is be prepared for a future that you can't see and opportunities that haven't yet presented themselves.
Purdue's archives and special collections is home to a vast library of Neil Armstrong's personal keepsakes, school books, and NASA-related documents.
The outpouring of support and interest and wonder after the moon landing is apparent in his correspondence. You'll see letters from all over the world congratulating him, asking him questions from school children. So that is a really interesting aspect of his papers as well, because it captures how the world felt, what it meant to the world.
We move from the perilous world of space travel to another field full of its own hazards, politics. Facing long odds in his first run for national office, this distinguished Purdue alum used a jingle to familiarize voters with the pronunciation of his last name. Hey, look him over. He's your kind of guy. His first name is Birch. His last name is By.
Birch By was a thinker. Birch By was a legal mind and thought of problems that could be solved by either constitutional amendment or new laws like Title IX.
Birch By was born in Terre Haute, Indiana in 1928. At Purdue, Birch By majored in agriculture. He was involved with sports. He was president of his senior class. So he had an active intercollegiate career.
Was thinking about becoming a farmer, but he quickly got into politics, government.
Birch By was elected in 1962 to his first of 3 terms in the United States Senate.
What sets him apart from almost any other senator is that he authored 2 constitutional amendments.
Except for the Founding Fathers, no American politician has introduced 2 amendments.
The 25th Amendment, passed in 1967, officially set in place presidential succession in case of incapacitation or death. The 26th Amendment, passed in 1971, lowered the voting age from 21 to 18.
Another one of his great accomplishments is Title IX.
And Title IX specified that women had to have equal opportunities in all areas of higher education. It spelled it out exactly. It's 37 words. Birch told me that those were 37 words turned out to be enormously powerful because they did change higher education in many, many ways. But what most people probably noticed the most is athletics. It created the women's athletics programs.
One historical footnote to Birch Bayh was that he and Ted Kennedy were involved in a plane crash.
And Birch Bayh was able to get out, and he called, "Is anybody still alive in there?" And nobody answered. And then Edward Kennedy kind of croaked out, "Yes, I'm still alive," but his back was badly injured. And Birch Bayh pulled him out of the plane and really saved his life.
He was a Hoosier, so he stayed in touch with the farmers and the agricultural community.
He cared about people. He cared about policy.
And he was just a wonderful, wonderful person.
Senator Bayh passed away in March of 2019 at the age of 91. We now move from the world of politics to athletics. Despite sustaining 2 major injuries over his career, our next Boilermaker continues to be at the top of his game. When Drew Brees graduated from Purdue in 2001 with a degree in industrial management, he was one of the most decorated athletes in Big Ten Conference history. His historic senior season guided Purdue back to the Rose Bowl for the first time in more than 30 years.
He had just about every total offense record in the Big Ten at the time of his departure. And those records stood for a long time.
When you look at the whole body of work, you'll be hard-pressed to find a better quarterback over the course of a career than Drew Brees at Purdue.
His professional career has been just as successful. Among his many achievements, Brees has led all NFL quarterbacks in passing yards, completion percentage, and the most 300-yard passing games.
I mean, he will go down as one of the all-time, great quarterbacks in NFL history.
He is in the top 5 in just about every passing category in the NFL, and that speaks volumes to the job, not only the longevity, but production. Nobody took his football more seriously than Drew Brees, but he also took advantage of his ability to make an impact in the community.
In 2003, he and his wife Brittany established the Brees Dream Foundation, which has contributed more than $33 million to support cancer patients and provide assistance for Hurricane Katrina rebuilding projects.
I think he's very, very unique in terms of his ability to actually be involved on a personal level. And he's used his fame really to do a lot of good.
He's the epitome of class. A lot of that stems from his time at Purdue and the fact that it's all real. It's an honor and a pleasure to be in his company whenever he has the ability to come back here.
He makes it a habit of coming back, and he has been the Pied Piper for Purdue athletics, very supportive of the program.
So let's do that today, man. Defining moment. Today. If you're with me, give me 2 claps. If you're with me, give me 2 claps. Let's go!
Boilermakers everywhere can take pride in Drew Brees' amazing accomplishments, as well as his continued support for Purdue athletics. And speaking of alums who often return to campus, this next Boilermaker was named to Forbes magazine's list of 100 most powerful women 10 times.
She's just very inspiring because she just doesn't stop.
Beth Brooke Marciniak's story goes back quite a ways. She had an accident. She severely injured her hip. The doctor told her she would never walk again. She said, which is kind of the mark of her personality throughout her life, "I'll show you. I'll not only walk again, I'm going to become the best athlete you ever saw." And she did. Basketball team, baseball team, golf team. She was just an all-around great athlete. And she came to Purdue on a scholarship, one of the first basketball scholarships offered to women following the passage of Title IX. And she played on our basketball team the 4 years she was here, did very well.
And without Title IX and all of the women who broke those barriers, you just never thought it could happen.
She studied in Cranard, got a great education, and she went off, and that kind of determination that she had even as a young child carried through in her life.
After graduation, Beth went to work for EY, a global tax insurance company. In the 1990s, she worked for the U.S. Department of Treasury on tax policy matters and most recently served as EY's global sponsor of diversity and inclusion.
She's had impact on women here at Cranard, but she's also had impact on women around the world.
She is a very strong advocate for LGBTQ rights.
Beth married former pro basketball player Michelle Brooke Marciniak in 2014 and officially retired from EY in 2019. She continues to advocate for women in business and serves on Purdue's Krannert Dean's Advisory Council.
I love the work she's doing, which is taking, these top athletes, these women, and getting them involved in business because of that match in skills. The teamwork and the dedication and persistence and everything, it's very much like Beth said, it translates so well into business.
Don't miss Waitress, the Tony-nominated musical with original music and lyrics by Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. April 23rd at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.
"150 years of giant leaps, giant progress, giant dreams, the culmination of small steps, hard work and calculated risks, pioneers flying across oceans, astronauts stepping foot on the moon. Because that's what we do. We run the numbers and we're not afraid to jump." We are Purdue University, and our eyes are set on the future, ready to take on the world's most pressing challenges. With 150 years worth of footprints behind us that prove, whatever we pursue, we will be the ones who take the next giant leap.
The Broadway musical, A Bronx Tale, based on the 1993 film, offers an unforgettable story of loyalty and family. Don't miss the show, described as Jersey Boys meets West Side Story. April 1st at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.
Welcome back to our celebration of Boilermakers who made giant leaps. We continue with a pair of Nobel Prize-winning chemistry professors, Herbert Brown and Aishi Negishi.
Professor Brown was sort of a rebel in his field. A lot of what Professor Brown did involved the way in which one could change molecules from one kind of compound to another.
While guest lecturing at the University of Pennsylvania in 1962, Professor Brown unknowingly inspired a Japanese graduate student in attendance.
I was really fascinated by his lecture and his chemistry. Almost instantly, I made a decision to become a member of his group, learn his kind of chemistry, that is organometallic chemistry.
After earning his PhD, Negishi went to work as a researcher for Herbert Brown at Purdue. He was named associate professor in 1979, just in time to witness his mentor receive the Nobel Prize in Chemistry.
Professor Brown was a true master of exploring chemistry. He was a superb mentor. I had a lot of freedom in thinking about my own research. In fact, it was during that time that I conceived what eventually gave me the Nobel.
Drawing from his ideas first conceived at Purdue, Negishi was part of a Syracuse University team that discovered a new way to bond carbon atoms together. Years later, on the morning of October 6, 2010,
5 a.m. Phone bell woke me up. So I thought, oh my gosh, there's someone calling me, you know? And then as I grabbed and then pulled it to my ear, I said, wait a minute, this is the day. You know?
The pharmaceuticals that keep alive the people that you love, the chairs that you're sitting on, the structures that you deal with, often the carbon-carbon bonds are hooked together using this synthesis. This touches where we live. This has impacted humanity.
The Brown-Negishi relationship perfectly encapsulates the power of inspiration between mentor and student. Decades earlier, Purdue President Edward Elliott was encouraging a similar environment by bringing to campus a world-famous aviation pioneer.
Amelia Earhart was a comet that shot across the sky in the 1930s and then just disappeared.
Amelia Earhart was known around the world. In 1932, she became the first woman to actually fly solo across the Atlantic.
Her fame just shot to the sky.
President Edward Elliott met Amelia in New York at a Women and the Changing World conference. Amelia was a speaker.
This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
And he heard her talk about women and women's careers and the potential that women had.
He was intrigued. He got to talk to Amelia more, and they were on the same wavelength.
Elliott said, "We would love to have you at Purdue," and she said she would like that.
So she would meet with the women students, talk to them about their aspirations.
Amelia Earhart was the first counselor on careers for women students at any university in the country. Elliott really loved Earhart. He was just captivated by her. He said, "You know, what else do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I'd like to do what she called one more adventure. That I'd like to fly around the globe at the equator."
With the help of the Purdue Research Foundation, Earhart was able to purchase the plane for her historic flight. On June 1st, 1937, Earhart took off from California and 31 days later disappeared over the Pacific Ocean.
I think Amelia's impact is still felt, but maybe we need to listen to it again. Some of the same verbiage that Amelia said back then, "Oh, women, you can be scientists, and you can be engineers, and you can be anything you want." I think the legacy is that we need to keep listening to what she said, because we're not there yet.
May I hope this movement will spread throughout all branches of applied science and industry, and that women may come to share with men the joy of doing. Those can appreciate rewards most who have helped create.
Purdue University is home to the Amelia Earhart Collection, which consists of photos, papers, and artifacts from Amelia's life. Our next alumnus has used his scientific knowledge in an effort to help feed the world. Growing up in the middle of a poverty-stricken village in west-central Ethiopia, it's hard to imagine the impact Gabisa Ejeta would have on the world. As a teen with a strong work ethic, Gabisa earned his way into Alamea College of Agriculture in Ethiopia. It was there that the U.S. Agency for International Development enabled him to attend Purdue University to earn a Ph.D. in plant breeding and genetics.
I've been very fortunate to have had some really great mentors. Certainly John Axtell. He literally picked me from Africa and brought me here. He saw in me very early on some attributes that he thought had shown potential.
Ejeta spent the early 1980s working in Sudan to develop Africa's first hybrid variety of grain sorghum, the fifth most important cereal crop in the world. He returned to Purdue University as a professor of agronomy in 1984, and after years of intense research, he designed sorghum seeds that were resistant to both drought and the parasitic weed striga.
What looks like a pretty weed is actually quite devastating. It causes tens of billions of dollars in agricultural production losses all across sub-Saharan Africa. He always had a program to sort of figure out what is the genetic basis of drought resistance, and then to combine those things into good yielding varieties. He knew would make an impact, and eventually it did.
In 2009, Gabisa Ejeta was presented with a prestigious World Food Prize. His research has helped feed millions of people in sub-Saharan Africa. Today, Professor Ejeta continues his work to eradicate hunger as director of the Purdue Center for Global Food Security.
His lifetime has been devoted to ending global hunger.
He's changed the lives, certainly, of millions of people. I mean, that impact is almost unfathomable for most academics.
The Broadway musical, A Bronx Tale, based on the 1993 film, offers an unforgettable story of loyalty and family. Don't miss the show, described as Jersey Boys meets West Side Story. April 1st at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.
150 years of giant leaps, giant progress, giant dreams. The culmination of small steps, hard work and calculated risks. Pioneers flying across oceans. Astronauts stepping foot on the moon. Because that's what we do. We run the numbers and we're not afraid to jump. We are Purdue University, and our eyes are set on the future, ready to take on the world's most pressing challenges. With 150 years worth of footprints behind us that prove, whatever we pursue, we will be the ones who take the next giant leap.
Don't miss Waitress, the Tony-nominated musical with original music and lyrics by Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. April 23rd at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.
We continue our celebration of Boilermakers who made giant leaps. Dubbed the First Lady of Engineering, this Purdue professor advised 5 U.S. presidents, was the subject of 2 best-selling books, and was portrayed by actress Myrna Loy on the silver screen.
Lillian Gilbreth was a really remarkable woman. In the early 20th century, she was a pioneer in scientific management.
She had a PhD in engineering, and she was one of the first women in the country to have a PhD in engineering. She's also an industrial psychologist, which is an interesting area. She and her husband, Frank, who was also an engineer, were very interested in time motion studies.
The idea was to make work easier and more efficient, not just easier, but more efficient.
The Gilbreths are credited with being sort of the precursors to what we would call ergonomics today.
Lillian Gilbreth came to Purdue in the mid-1930s.
She became the first female professor in an engineering department, not only at Purdue, but in the nation.
Lillian did some fascinating things. She created what's called the kitchen triangle, where the stove and the sink and the refrigerator were supposed to be within certain distances of each other. And that was the most efficient triangle space to work in. She standardized the height of kitchen counters. She also created the wastebasket that you can open with your foot.
In addition to being one of the pioneers in this new field of scientific management, Lillian Gilbreth gave birth 13 times and raised 12 children.
And 2 of the children wrote 2 books, Cheaper by the Dozen and the other Bells on Their Toes, which was about their family life together.
How do you raise a dozen children efficiently in a household?
And both of those also became movies.
And the movies and book were both extraordinarily popular and of course humorous when it was done by Hollywood.
It's clear that there was a sense that certainly Lillian brought to the table that workforces are made up of people, and we have to manage them as people and not just as costs of production.
In 2018, the College of Engineering established the Lillian Gilbreth Postdoctoral Fellowship Program to attract and prepare outstanding individuals with recently awarded PhDs. This next alumnus has made it possible to watch our government in the comfort of our own living rooms. Born and raised in Lafayette, Indiana, Brian Lamb started his media career as a student disc jockey for his high school radio station. He retired as founder and chairman of C-SPAN.
This Midwestern upbringing influenced him. Purdue and Lafayette had a big impact on him.
When I started in college, I didn't know what my goal was. I was in love with the medium of radio. I learned a lot of things that I never knew that I should know, including things like philosophy, great issues, general studies, all of these things that are basically the classics. I got a degree in speech, and then I went to the Navy and spent 4 years in the Navy. So that combination got me my start in Washington, D.C.
Brian Lamb created a television network at the time when there were very few television cable networks. So he had a vision.
I made the suggestion to the cable television industry that we try something unusual. Long-form television, hearings, House of Representatives and the Senate, and a group of cable television executives said yes. And it started very small. Started with about 3 million television homes that could see us, and it moved through the years all the way up to 100 million.
Among his many accolades, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States. He also received an honorary PhD from Purdue in 1986, and Purdue School of Communication was named in his honor.
Brian comes back to campus at least once or twice a year. He loves interacting with the students.
The recognition that he gets, which I think is certainly justified, is nothing that he wants. He's actually a very humble person, which is what allowed him to say that the American people had the right to see their own government.
That wraps up our very special edition of Boiler Bytes. Obviously, these were just a select few of the countless Boilermakers who've left lasting imprints in their respective fields. Purdue continues to be an institution of higher learning that reaches far beyond our classrooms. So as we celebrate 150 years of giant leaps, we're also looking forward to the next 150. Thanks for watching.
Purdue Pete says it's time to hammer down Gear Up. Always look for the officially licensed Collegiate Products holograms on apparel and other products to help support the scholarship funds that have already generated more than $20 million for Boilermaker students. Thanks for your loyalty, Purdue fans.
For nearly 30 years, Blue Man Group has spoken to more than 35 million people worldwide, all without saying a word. Returning to Elliott Hall, this Blue Man Group performance is infused with new music, custom-built instruments, sensory-stimulating graphics, and unforgettable entertainment. February 20th at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.
150 years of giant leaps, giant progress, giant dreams, the culmination of small steps, hard work and calculated risks, pioneers flying across oceans, astronauts stepping foot on the moon. Because that's what we do. We run the numbers and we're not afraid to jump. We are Purdue University, and our eyes are set on the future, ready to take on the world's most pressing challenges. With 150 years worth of footprints behind us that prove, whatever we pursue, we will be the ones who take the next giant leap.
The Brother Brothers returned to Purdue after a memorable performance opening for I'm With Her in 2018. Rolling Stone called them one of 10 new country artists you need to know, and Convocations is honored to welcome them as outreach artists in residence, inspiring our students and our community with free performances in unexpected places. February 27th and 28th. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations. The Broadway musical, A Bronx Tale, based on the 1993 film, offers an unforgettable story of loyalty and family. Don't miss the show, described as Jersey Boys meets West Side Story. April 1st at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations. Don't miss Waitress, the Tony-nominated musical with original music and lyrics by Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter Sarah Bareilles. April 23rd at Elliott Hall. Details at convocations.org. Presented by Purdue Convocations.